Thank you so much for the kind words. Sometimes you want to believe them. Good morning, everyone. Uh, I just noticed as I was coming on the stage while the lamp lighting was happening that probably I must be the only non-PhD in the room. But, but let me start by saying something which I think we should take a lot of heart from and understand why we are here. In the 20th century, if you take the expansion of life expectancy that happened globally, the expansion of life expectancy was contributed maximum by just two things: clean, safe drinking water and vaccines. And then you realize the contribution of such things that happen, and then you take the import of what vaccines means to all of us. I think this is something which sometimes doesn't sink in, people don't realize it, and it is important to state that what has happened to the world due to vaccines. We keep on going forward, but when we look backward, we realize, and the life expectancy growth is tremendous. Global life expectancy from an average of about 39 years at the beginning of the 20th century went up to nearly 70. So if you add 31 years and you say maximum contribution came from just two things, then you realize what happened. But I saw the agenda and I realized that there is a lot of discussion that is going to happen on a lot of serious science around vaccines. So my, therefore, idea was to talk to you about something little more relevant about why humanity and vaccines have a much stronger relationship. There are three parts to the whole vaccine story today. There is technology, there is diseases, and there is equality. And we need to manage all three. The point is we end up managing one or managing two, and then we don't realize the impact of all three together. In technology, you're going to discuss a lot. I think if I talk about technology, I think there are several platforms that have come up. And I don't want to indulge in platform discussion here, but want to say one thing, that I have gone through several years of understanding vaccines and realized that it used to take numerous amount or number of years to get a vaccine to the market, because efficacy and effectiveness were two different things all the time in discussion of vaccines. And therefore you had to wait and wait and wait for a vaccine to be really available in the marketplace. And that would mean that to that extent you would lose lives. And I launched HPV vaccine, so I can tell you, every hour 8 women die in India due to HPV. Now if such is the condition, you cannot lose lives. But the new platforms are delivering a much better standard for regulators to evaluate and understand that vaccines can be brought to the market much earlier than before. And to that extent, the area under the curve for saving lives goes up dramatically. So the import of platforms is not about just about technology. The importance by which we look at these platforms is about how much more lives can we save much quicker. And that is something for us to understand. The platforms have also educated regulators. That's important to understand. That platforms have educated regulators to look at vaccines differently and trying to understand which vaccines can be brought to the market earlier. So it has had a much bigger impact on the global stage, and I think this is a very, very big plus of technology. The second is about diseases. And we have all struggled with a lot of diseases. Vaccines have managed a lot of diseases, but there is a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. There are diseases which you feel horrible about. I worked a lot on tuberculosis on the global stage. And I have literally, burned midnight oil to fight tuberculosis and put a lot of effort in this country on fighting tuberculosis. I feel so bad, the amount of death and destruction tuberculosis causes. You might have realized or not realized, but probably tuberculosis killed as much people in India during COVID as much as COVID. Why should we have people dying of such diseases? Take malaria, dengue, chikungunya, you keep going on, and you realize that the acceptance has to be there that we have a lot more to cover in this world. And the best way to deal with is vaccines. The only way or the best way to deal with some of these diseases is vaccines, and fortunately, technology and platforms are allowing us to look at these diseases in a much, much better way. Infectious diseases have staged a remarkable turnaround. This world was moving towards chronic care diseases in a much, much faster way, and suddenly you had the resurgence of infectious diseases. As Dr. Anjan said about, you stop COVID, there is monkeypox, there is something else coming. It's looking like a new stream of difficult life that we are seeing in infectious diseases, and therefore we are fortunate that platforms are changing. And the biggest thing about these platforms changing is they have not come from big companies. They have not come from big pharma. Today when we say AstraZeneca vaccine is actually some scientists in Oxford. Somebody says Pfizer vaccine, if you say that in Germany, people get very angry. I have a plant in Germany and I know the people there getting very upset about, because they say it is a BioNTech vaccine. 2 Turkish scientists living in Germany, husband, wife. So there is also this ability now that vaccines can be literally researched by smaller places, much lesser investment and much better technology in a much faster way. This is the other big advantage that we are seeing, and therefore diseases tackling is going to be a new frontier for us, and I'm hoping that we together are able to do this. The third important point I wanted to talk about, the last important point, was on equality. I think, look, as much as we like what happened during COVID and what we fought, realize that we were fortunate, we were, let's say, we must thank the whole system that got created in the last, let's say, 3-4 decades in India to manufacture vaccines. We were a lucky country. Otherwise, but for the Western world and China and India, hardly anybody has any manufacturing capability of vaccines. And this led to, imagine there are lots and swaths of population in Africa, in certain parts of the world, Latin America, where vaccine equality was just not there. There was no availability of vaccine in the first 1 year of COVID. It led to a lot of death and destruction. Now that is something that we have to confront and understand, that this is not good for the world. And this is something which is a raging debate right now, that is it that vaccine, let's say, access gets restricted in difficult times to people who can afford or people who can manufacture? Is it a case of, some people raise debate on patents? I think it's a foolish debate. It is not about patents. Some people raise debate about tech transfer, maybe so. But the more important debate here is how humanity thinks about it. And this is the biggest debate we are having all across big platforms, at major global platforms, including WHO, that, that this is not right, what happened during COVID. And hopefully we all learn from it. We as a country have a lot to contribute. We are a chaotic democracy, so exports got a little bit hurt during the COVID vaccine. Exports got hurt because of various reasons. But that is not the debate that we should be in. But we should be in the debate of, can we really have capacities that can serve the world? And that's a different thing. Fortunately, this time we not only raised our capacities, but we also raised our capabilities as a country. And that is different than raising capacities alone, because India otherwise in pharmaceuticals was always about capacity building. This time it was capacity plus capability building. And therefore there was a dramatic change in the way India has tackled this. I think these are the 3 main things that I wanted to talk about. And I still remember one incident in my life, and therefore I feel so much dearly about vaccines, is when I had joined Merck, or MSD as it is known outside US. My first visit to headquarters, and just joined, of Merck in the US, the first thing I went and asked people, actually 2 questions I asked. One is, in that company that has a record of having 17 Nobel laureates having worked there. 17 Nobel laureates, huge, including Dr. Alexander Fleming, who actually converted penicillin to a delivery system at Merck Labs. So my first thing was, do you have a place where, where they used to sit? So some of them, of course, this was a newer office, so some of them used to sit there and had sat there. So I went and saw those places where they used to sit. Of course, some of them were occupied by new people. But and the second question I asked is, where was Dr. Maurice Hilbert sitting? Obviously, he was not sitting in that place. And then I requested people to tell me where Maurice Hillman used to sit. And in the evening, one of the scientists took me to a place where Dr. Maurice Hillman was sitting. I don't think I've prayed so much in a temple as much I prayed to that place. Because this man contributed so much to humanity by, having many vaccines contributing to the global list, essential list. So I think we need to ensure that we respect what is happening in our country. All of you have contributed a lot for vaccine development, but there are more frontiers to seek, more frontiers to capture. Thank you very much. Thank you.